It's a genuine pleasure to be with all of you today. This is really our first opportunity of being acquainted, but I am very excited about the opportunity of addressing you and helping you understand more about the opportunities that you're going to have this semester in the lecture series. So I thought what I would do is just introduce you to myself a little bit more, and then I want to share several principles that we'll be learning this semester through the individuals who will come to address you. So, what you should expect to learn out of this class. First of all, a lot of young people your age have not decided exactly what they want to do. Even if you've picked a career, you haven't decided exactly what it is that you'd like to do. I hope this class either turns you on to entrepreneurship or maybe tells you that you'd like to go a different direction. But I think what for most of you it'll do is it'll provide a mix of being able to introduce you to entrepreneurship and its role wherever you decide to land. And you'll be able to also, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, you'll be able to really explore that to the limits. Also, how to network and the value of networking. I think that most of you understand probably a little bit about networking and why it might be important, but I'm here to tell you that it's very important. As you've probably heard before, sometimes it's not so much what you know, but who you know. And being in the right place at the right time. And so connecting with as many good people and surrounding yourselves with great people all the time is one of the ways to get yourself where you'd like to go. So we hope you also learn the correct process for starting a business. Instead of just taking a chance and going into the wild, wild west, we actually hope that you'll begin to understand a little bit of a process, that it's not so rogue to be an entrepreneur, that there is a systematic process that you can follow to become a successful entrepreneur. And then also lessons learned. Notice how I have encapsulated the L, and you can take the root earned out of there, and every lesson in life that you receive will be earned, most of it by bad experience. They call it wisdom. Wisdom very rarely comes from good experience. It comes from bad experience, so you should embrace it. What I like to suggest, though, is that we just learn lessons one time instead of repeat mistakes over and over. Also, how to cull or mine nuggets of truth and information from each of the lectures that you'll hear. And I hope you know that it's not dependent upon how much they entertain you, but really what kind of information that they're delivering to you, and that you have the presence of mind and the vision to be able to pick out the things that are really important to you. And one of the ways that you'll pick out things that are important is the number of times that you hear it repeated throughout the semester. And also, I would like to suggest to you that the more that you put into this class, as with every class, the more that you'll get out of it. So this is just a starting point. This is who I am, though, actually. This is my most important entrepreneurial venture. And I can tell you that it's an entrepreneurial venture. Some of you guys that have a hard time, or what I call taking 2 hours to watch 60 Minutes to make this decision of marriage, realize that you're just giving up a lot right now. If you don't now, you will later. You know, I was 21 and a half when I married, and I married a young woman that was only 18. Now, I wouldn't suggest that to my kids today, and none of them married at 18, but I can tell you that it was the finest decision I ever made. And, it allowed us to start a family right away, and I have 5 marvelous kids that are all doing the things that they should be doing. So they've got spouses. The one in the center at the bottom, she's a junior here at BYU, but she just got married. And so the rest of them have already gone through BYU. I wanted to just share briefly how I got started. So, because a lot of you will wonder, how do I get started? How do I know what to do? How do I know when to do it? When do I start a business, if I start one at all? For me, I can go all the way back to when I was about 23 or 4 years old, and that's when I actually said to myself out loud, I hope I own my own business someday. That's what I really want to do. I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to work for myself. But regardless if I work for somebody else or if I work for myself, I want to make sure that I'm making a big difference. So that was a documented statement that I made back when I was about 24 years old. I still have it written, and I showed all my kids when they got older and they were old enough to realize, that that's an important step that you can take to define who it is that you'd like to be. So I got started in my early career, sales and sales management. I worked for a large company by the name of Kernite, part of the NCH organization out of Irving, Texas. At the time, back in 1981, it was about a $500 million company, and they had divisions and salespeople all over the United States. And I became the top salesperson in this division in just a matter of about 5 months. That propelled me into sales management. I found out that sales management wasn't as easy as selling. It took me about 2 years to learn how to be a good sales manager. But I did become a good sales manager, and then I became a division manager for the company before I left and became national sales manager and later general manager for an orthopedic company called Orthopedic Casting Laboratory. You can see some of the products that we sold. One of the products that we had was unique. You can see the dispenser with the various size, what we called splint roll. It's what we would call today a blue ocean product. It was patented, nobody else had it, and it basically took 15 layers of plaster, and instead of a doctor or an orthopedic physician having to layer that one by one after they got it wet and squeeze the moisture out of it and apply each layer upon each other, it was long, tedious, or longer and tedious. This, they just simply had to cut off, put in water, roll out the moisture, put it on, put an ace bandage around it, and you had an automatic splint. And I'm certain that some of you have worn something like that today. My first company, after having had experience, so I started my career in 1981, so now we're in 1988. I'd already served a long time in sales. I had written sales manuals. I had run many sales teams. I had run several district and sales managers, and then I'd run whole sales teams nationally. So I had quite a bit of experience. But I found that I really had a minimal amount of experience in general management. I had done some, with operations and supply chain, but not as much. Very little with finance, and so there were some holes in my resume that made me think that as I start my own gig, I'm going to pick somebody that I know, like, and trust to be my partner, and we're going to go do something together. Somebody that I trust with my wife, but somebody that I'm going to document the situation as though I didn't trust him. I think that's an important feature, because I want to work with people that I know, like, and trust, but I want to document it also, because I don't want to leave any questions. You're going to find that communication is a very difficult road, and that I call it the root of all evil. Bad communication, the root of all evil, with couples and families and in nations. So it was really the foundation of our company was a simple product. It was basically all the products that you could fit inside of a large first aid cabinet. And so it seemed like a simple business, but we private labeled all of our own products. We had probably 150 products. We branded our company very well, and we developed outstanding, well, I was going to suggest that when I did it, I mortgaged my home. We bootstrapped it through internal profits. Then we developed a successful protected distribution model, sort of almost like franchising, but they weren't franchisees, but they had contract distributor areas. We had them all throughout the United States. We grew into a national leader. One of the things that really propelled our growth was developing a proprietary sales management and sales manual for our whole industry. Proved very successful. Anyway, we harvested the Cintas, the uniform people. I'm not sure their size today. They're at least $6 billion, but they're by far the industry leader in their category. After I sold this, I decided that I was going to write a book, and I like to ask, why did I decide to be an author? Well, I didn't actually decide to be an author. And you'll do many things in your life that you didn't decide to do right up front. But I had an interesting experience happen when I was going to meet with my stake president, and I had asked him if he would give a doctrinal discussion on the apostasy I was the stake young men's president for a mini MTC. On the way over, just out of nowhere, I heard that voice and said, President Deschler, he's not going to be there. He's going to get called out of town, and he's going to ask you to give this thing. And I just stopped and I paused, almost like a telegraph, and I said, well, what will I say? And then it just ran on. And so I actually pulled over and I wrote down everything that came to my mind. And then I went to the Stake Center and ran into him, and he was actually hunting me down. And he said, Scott, I'm so sorry. I know this is very short notice, but I'm not going to be able to give your seminar. Would you please give it instead? So anyway, that became the genesis of a book that I wrote called Where Have All the Profits Gone? And I can tell you that this is a process of learning by faith, acting instead of being acted upon. I think that's a really critical thing that you can learn in your life. When you're watching TV and doing many kinds of things, playing video games and whatever else it is, I can tell you that you are being acted upon. But when you are engaged in things that are meaningful and good, you are acting. That is learning by faith. Was this an entrepreneurial venture? I call it the most expensive book ever written. It took me 3 years, 14-hour days, 6 days a week. And even then, I still worked on another business during several hours a week, which I started in the middle of this project. I figured that it cost me millions of dollars to write the book, based on what I would have earned if I wouldn't have spent those 3 years doing the book. But it did sell out of its first edition. I'm in the process of doing a second edition, but this other book is taking precedence right now. So my next company was APU Solutions. We bring together the supply chain of the property casualty insurance companies, the collision repair shops, and the salvage recyclers for bringing efficiencies to procuring alternative parts or salvage parts to repair vehicles for the insurance industry. I've said that a few times. It took us a long time to get to profitability. We failed to follow lean approach early on. We got funded for $8 million. That happened very quickly. I started fundraising in January of 2000. In February, I had a commitment for $8 million. In March, the definitive agreement was signed. The letter of intent. On April 13th, 2000, the day the tech market dropped 318 points, we signed the definitive agreement. That was the beginning of the end of the internet bubble. And so the original $8 million that was committed, they only gave us the first $1 million. But I had already spent that $1 million. So it didn't follow the lean approach. We'll talk about that this semester. So lessons learned, start lean. Boards can be very helpful. One of the smartest things that I did in this business was that I attracted 3 other very successful, capable, deep-pocketed individuals that I know, liked, and trusted. And the 4 of us funded this company all the way through. We didn't get outside investment from anybody else. So that allowed us, when we sold the company last year, even though it had taken us a long time to really build the company, because we had to wait 6 years for the entire industry to go wireless. We never anticipated that. Who would have thought that it would have taken 6 years for a whole industry to go wireless from 2000 to the beginning of 2007? So that's the only point that we could begin to scale was beginning in 2007. Nevertheless, we made a very nice exit because we owned all the stock. Incremental learning and timely pivots. I can tell you that that is absolutely one of the most important things that we did is trying not to learn lessons twice. Once we learned a lesson, we moved on and we tried not to repeat that kind of mistake. Leadership is everything. I'm going to tell you one moment in that company that saved the entire company. I was on vacation for my 20th wedding anniversary in May of 2000. So I'm in Paris, France, with my wife and a couple other friends. And I get a phone call from my partner and says, 2 of our other partners just emptied our bank account. That's what they did. They went down to Springfield, Missouri, where we were working with the PPO. They were officers of the company. They took out their investment. They paid themselves money that hadn't been contracted for, and they took off. And you say, well, couldn't you sue them? Sure. But ask David how far you go raising money when you're in the middle of a lawsuit. So we were in a catch-22. We could have sued, but we elected not to. And at that point, with the bank account almost empty, I stood in front of our team. I'll never forget it. 16 people. And I told them that I did not know the future, but I told them that we would not quit and that we had a very exciting opportunity and that they would engage with me, that we would be able to really take this product across the River Jordan and into the Promised Land. And they never left. 9 of those 16 people were with the company and are still with the company after it exited. 9 of the original 16 that were there that day. Leadership is everything. And whatever you can learn about leadership, nothing that you will do that's really meaningful in your life is going to happen without learning how to lead. And I also can tell you that I learned, if I hadn't learned it in my first business, like Winston Churchill said at a college graduation ceremony, never, never, never give up. He said it 3 times. And so then we had the successful harvest just this last year to Autotex. So in the middle of building APU Solutions, when I learned that it was going to take several more years to build out, that we were going to have to wait several years for the industry to go wireless and how long we didn't know, I decided that I didn't want to both fund the company and to work for free. What a novel idea, right? Not working for free. I'd already worked for free for 2 years, and I had been putting in money the whole time to keep it going. So I decided that with it taking a long time, I'm still okay giving it money. I'm still okay sitting on the board and helping to guide it, but I think I'm going to go do something else and make some more money. So I bought half of this vinyl fence company. It's a long story, and I won't tell it today, but it's what brought me back to Utah. We built this from a small $1 million company to a $35 million company in just 6 years. And we sold it to a private equity group early in 2007. Good timing, right? Except for that's also the time that I invested. Lessons learned. One of the things that allowed us to, in such a short period of time, grow this company to be the largest vinyl fence company in the country was that we had efficient, well-run individual departments. I looked at it like basketball, like shooting free throws, dribbling, rebounding, defense, and so forth. And the whole idea that you could take each one of those skills in isolation and you can practice them and you can get good at them. If you just work them in drills, one after the other, and you just stay with it, ultimately you're going to get there. Well, business is like that because you've got sales and marketing and finance and operations and production and administration and so on and so forth. And you can actually take a look at each one of those in isolation and understand them better and understand how to outperform your competitors. That's what we did. The other 2 companies that were our main competitors, they had been in the industry a very long time, and they both had money. So it wasn't, and one had been in the industry since 1985, the other since 1992. We entered the marketplace 2002, and then by 2005, we're the largest vinyl fence company in the country. So, interesting. Not a very sexy business, as I like to say, but it did make money. Refined systems and process. Basically, what I did when I very first came to the organization is that I reverse engineered everything that we did from the time that a sales call was made or the phone rang that said, you know, will you send somebody to see me, all the way until the check cleared the bank. And I wrote a systematic process of everything that went in between, and then I looked for inefficient steps, and then I looked to refine and document every one of those steps, and then I actually broke them down into departments, and so that every department had their own marching orders, their own manual, their own Bible, and that's one of the ways that we were able to scale quickly and easily and efficiently. Also, I learned that picking partners is very important. So it's not just important to have capable partners, it's important to have partners that you know, like, and trust. All right, then I actually got involved with a friend's company. I invested a lot of money into his company because I really liked the new direction that he was taking an industry, an entire industry. And I said, I think you've got something really scalable here, and I'd like to invest on the front end. So I actually went into run the company in 2009 and 10 after I left the vinyl fence business. And so I had a marvelous experience preparing that company to scale, and we're actually doubling every 2.5 years, and we have been for the last 7 or 8 years. We're poised for major growth right now. I'm in discussions with major healthcare providers and exchanges in the new healthcare system, and so we're very excited about that. I had a unique experience happen in 2010 when I had the opportunity to, I had already been a stockholder in this company, and I heard lots of things on the underground that things weren't going well. So as I got a little bit more intimate with what was happening and met with the CEO, I determined there was a lot of things going on that weren't correct in the startup. And so myself and a couple of others, we called a rogue shareholder meeting. We basically took over the board. We shut the company down. We rebooted the company, and we went from basically a situation where there was 2 weeks away from incontrovertible bankruptcy. What I mean by that is do not pass go, do not collect $200. You know, in 2 weeks, we're done. And there is no way that it was going to happen any other way. The money was gone, and the management team was committed to its, we're done. But we went in, there was $15 million of shareholder value that had to be saved. That means that all the moms and pops, because they didn't get institutional funding, they went around to lots of people here in Utah County, made big stories, but they paid themselves a lot of money. They didn't do the startup the way that startups are meant to be done. And companies fail not because they don't have enough money, they fail because they don't have enough know-how. And so that's why we're hoping that you have an opportunity to hear from many where you can learn from some of their lessons learned. At any rate, we did the turnaround. We have relationships with all the largest industry players that you can imagine, from LG to Sony to Philips to Dell to Acer, and the list goes on. And we just signed an agreement with iMation, the largest distributor of optical media in the world. So, and of course then for the past 2.5 years, I've been the managing director here at the Rollins Center for Entrepreneurship and Technology. We actually, for the last 3 years in a row, have been ranked one of the top 5 programs in the entire country. We put out more entrepreneurs out of Brigham Young University pretty much than any university in the country. We had a vision. We said we want to be the global leader. We built structure around it in curriculum, in events, competitions, and mentoring services. And that allowed us to increase in the rankings. And the success has been the outgrowth of literally dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of successful enterprises over the last few years. So I want to take the time that we have left, and we'll have lots of time to do Q&A afterwards. So if you're interested in really getting into some meaty issues, then you can plan to attend the 30-minute Q&A from 4:30 to 5 up in 710. But I want to impress upon your minds the importance of this statement. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Now, this was undocumented stuff in the Bible. Okay? In biblical times, they didn't have research studies. They didn't have brain monitors, neurosensors, or any of these things that they do today. This was simply a revelation from the Lord to his prophet. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So, this guy, Napoleon Hill, wrote this book, Think and Grow Rich. And people, especially people at Brigham Young, as they read that, need to read it with the right lens. It was one of Howard W. Hunter's favorite books. He quoted it. It's quoted in his autobiography. But when you read it, it's like, holy cow, all this guy is thinking about is being filthy rich and naming a number and being consumed about money and wealth and filthy... anyway, that's not what he's really saying, but that's how it can come across. So you have to read it with the right thoughts and the right attitude. But he did say this, and it's an important one: whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. I absolutely believe that. So, read this with me if you will. Even the adult brain is plastic, able to forge new connections among its neurons and thus rewire itself. Sensory input can change the brain, and the brain remodels itself in response to behavioral demands. Notice, to behavioral demands. I want you to think about that. Behavioral demands is what you want, and you rewire your own brain. The existence and importance of brain plasticity are no longer in doubt. The brain is dynamic, and the life we lead leaves its mark in the complex circuitry of the brain. Footprints of the experiences we have had, the thoughts we have thought, the actions we have taken. And then it says, the brain allocates neural real estate depending on what we use most. The thumb of the video game addict, the index finger of the braille reader, the analytic ability of a chess player, the language skills of a linguist. But the brain rewires itself on something much more ephemeral than what we do. It rewires itself based upon what we think. Now, how does it make you feel that you read the scripture now and it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he? And we have empirical scientific data, actually mounds of it. There's a study that was done at MIT with rats, and it showed that they put chocolate and stuff at the end of the maze, and at the beginning of the maze, you know, and the very first time they did it, they would scratch at it, and they would sniff, and they got all this, and finally they would make it to the end, and they would send them through again and again and again, and ultimately the rats could sail through that thing. But the interesting thing is that when they performed the study, and they had the brains, the rat brain attached to these neural sensors, that in the beginning, their brain was working furiously, trying to figure out, where's this darn chocolate? And then, at the end, they didn't have to think about it, and their brain stopped thinking. There was no or limited brain activity. So that's what happens with our habits, is that we're creatures of habit. And thus, this is why that things that are addictive in nature, like pornography, are so darn hard for people to give up. And that's why the good book says, well, don't get started in the first place, because then you won't have to return like a dog to your vomit. Right? Okay, that's what it says. But it can be conquered, because it can be conquered by behavioral demands. Now, where does all this meaning come in with entrepreneurship? Because, what you think about and how you act instead of being acted upon, what you determine that you're going to learn, is what determines how successful that you're going to be. And so it's important to begin to control what it is that you think. So there's a paradigm shift that has been taking place in the last 4 or 5 years in entrepreneurship. You guys familiar with Alfred Sloan? How many of you know his name? Looks like nobody, or a few, very few. So Alfred Sloan, he's called the father of the modern corporation, General Motors. He is the one that put General Motors on the map. He is the one that made General Motors a household name. So, but was he a good entrepreneur? He wasn't the founder of General Motors. The founder of General Motors was this guy, Billy Durant. Billy Durant had a horse and buggy company. And he was the first to put different makes and models of horse buggies so that people could have sort of the features that they wanted. And when the car industry came around, he did the same thing with cars. The thing is, he was a bit of a renegade. He wasn't what we call a finished manager. And so the board, they kicked him out of his own company. And then he went and started Chevrolet. And Chevrolet got bigger than General Motors, and it bought General Motors. And the same thing happened again. He was a rogue, and they booted him. And so that's when Alfred Sloan, that's when he comes in. The fact of the matter is that starting a company isn't the same thing as running a company. So we like to define entrepreneurship as coming up with the answers to unknown business models or questions. Unproven. untried. And that business is executing on known business models. Make sense? Entrepreneurship, the unknown, business, the known. So in business, execution is like football teams trying to execute to their game plan. And the team that executes most flawlessly is the team that wins. The same in business. And of course, everyone likes to call it natural law, natural selection, the survival of the fittest, and that's really what business is, and it's why, in fact, business or capitalism handled correctly is really a wonderful tool, because the efficiencies that it provides allows only the strong to survive. That provides the best value, it provides the best pricing, and although it sounds harsh, in fact, it's what provides the value to run an economy efficiently and well, and to provide for nations. If people would just get out of the way and let business people do their thing. But who's this guy with the question mark? Philo Farnsworth. Who was Philo Farnsworth? Yell it out. TV. Where'd the guy graduate? Brigham Young University. But guess what? He wasn't an experienced entrepreneur. He was a great inventor. Numerous patents. Let me see if I can remember. Well, it's not going to let me. Some of my notes down there. Radar, the electron telescope. I mean, the list is long of the number of cool things that Philo Farnsworth helped bring about. But actually, the people that stole his technology was RCA. There's a difference, what I'm saying, is between entrepreneurship or the process of a startup and moving into business or becoming a finished manager. And you know what? At the end of the day, I hope you'll want to do both. I hope you'll want to have the skill set of a seasoned entrepreneur who really understands the power and the coolness of a startup. When we started APU Solutions, we knew that we were embarking on changing an entire industry. And we did. An entire industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, we didn't make that much money because our piece was small. But that's what we did, is we changed an important process in an entire industry. That's kind of cool. But it's just as important, if you want to keep running the company, that you learn how to become a finished manager. And of course, they teach that in business school. You know, this is how the process of a startup actually has worked for maybe the last decade or two. So, we start over here with the midnight genius stage. You wake up in the middle of the night, you've got this bright idea. And so then you begin to tell your family about it, and they think that you're the American Idol, the best voice on the planet, and say, this is great, and we're going to give you some money. And so you raise money with friends, family, and fools. And you get to the next stage where you get committed, and you actually start building this dang thing and develop a location, put in a location, all the stuff that goes into it, and then you get so committed to it that you haven't really listened to customers, but you've called on a few customers, and they tell you need to do this or this, and so you start putting more stuff on it, like putting lipstick on a pig. You just keep building this thing up, but you have no idea if they're going to want it yet. That's what we did in the beginning with APU Solutions, and it's why I lost the first $1 million of that investment that I got. All right, so anyway, then there's the sales pipeline problem, because now you've got to build, and you go try to sell it to people, and people aren't buying what you're selling. They're not eating the dog food. And so now you say, now what? I've invested all this time and all this money. Well, this really is the right approach that we're going to go through, and this is what I want to impress upon you today, is that over the next 11 or 12 weeks, is that you're going to hear from many different entrepreneurs. And you need to pay attention to the process of the startup. So instead of going through this normal process, we'll take customers down, we'll move it all the way back to here. And before we spend 1 red cent of anybody else's money, we will go through this whole process of starting a business in the right way. So in the early stage, we like to say, nail it. Nail the model. Get the model right. Don't spend any money marketing or forming a team or building a team, certainly not beyond the founders, until you nail the model. That's why you're going to read this book, Nail It, Then Scale It. It's a great book. Don't wait till the end of the class to read it. The quicker you read it, the more you'll understand what's going on as they talk about it. So you nail the model and you prepare for scaling. Then in the growth stage, you move from the unknown to the known and execute. So what does that become now? What do we call that? Business, right? Executing on a known model. So we're going to now, in our growth stage, once we've nailed the model, we're going to execute. We innovate to create distance from other competitors. And so this is what we, this is what we call blue ocean. So why would you want to swim with the sharks, meaning you've got 100 sharks out there that are all going after the same bait, all the same fish supply? Or would you rather move out into blue ocean where you're the only shark in that part of the sea and you have all the fish to yourself? Which would you prefer? Same in business. So this is a model or a matrix that I developed about 3 years ago to simplify the process of starting a business. It begins with an idea that demonstrates a great pain or a great opportunity. A great pain or a great opportunity. And you start out with this early solution and these early hypotheses. And then it moves into business model development where you actually test all of your ideas. You test all of your hypotheses. And you test if you even got the pain right. And the book will explain more about it. Only when you begin to launch and scale do you spend money. Because then you know that the hard-earned money that's being spent is actually worthwhile. I was listening to a speech that was given by Gary Crocker on Friday night. He's a philanthropist, a well-known business guy in life sciences, done several funds. And he made the statement that I've said many times. He said, I basically view investor funds as sacred. And he explained why. Because it's somebody's hard-earned money. What does the average American earn in a year? The average American earns in a year 50 grand. So basically, when you invest 50,000, you're buying 1 year of a person's time. How much is that worth? Should it be spent frivolously? He and I argue absolutely not. So don't spend the money until you're ready to scale. And then you'll know that you'll use it fruitfully. You're only going to get one shot at somebody else's capital. Execution comes on later of principles of execution and how you build company culture and so forth. So terms to remember. Nail it, then scale it. Lean approach, lean startup. Business models, business model development. Business model canvas, you'll hear about it. Customer validation. Learning outside the building instead of inside. Instead of Googling everything, get out of the house. People, get out of the house and start visiting with customers and partners and suppliers and talk to them. Iteration, starting with one belief, learning, then pivoting, learning, then pivoting, learning, then pivoting. That is those are called iterations. Scrum development and agile development are terms that are often used in web development. And then MVP, minimum viable products. So how to get the most out of this next 11 or 12 weeks. For I did liken all lectures and content unto me, that it might be for my profit. Notice how I've given that some extra emphasis. I didn't even superimpose that word. That's the word used in Scripture. For my profit and learning. Listen to the Spirit and take great notes. Little of what is actually said may be the most important things that you hear. A lot of you guys are returned missionaries, and yet you never look at the temporal world as something where you can access the Holy Ghost. And I'm here to tell you that nothing that I've done that matters came outside of the inspiration of the Holy Ghost. Study, ponder, practice leadership. So whatever you do in your life, this skill applies. Successful people are successful because they're willing to do the things that unsuccessful people are not willing to do. You think that's simple? It's absolutely the truth. Sometimes the greatest principles are the simplest, least suspecting culprits. Many people have gold fever, but daggone few have the digging spirit. Everybody wants the gold and nobody wants to work for it. I can tell you that running your own business is everything you ever hoped for and more in terms of effort. Most students don't attend Q&A. I hope you will. Now I want you to think about it. I don't think too many of you have class afterwards because it's at 5 o'clock. Some of you will. Okay, I got it. And every once in a while something's going to come up. But most of the meat is going to happen in the Q&A. And I know there's a person here that has taken this lecture series 3 times. He's in his 3rd go-around. I could tell you stories about people I know that are 30 years old that came to this lecture series 5 times because they were interested. Oh, what did I say? Successful people are successful because they're willing to do the things that unsuccessful people are not willing to do. That means come to Q&A. Your career will evolve, okay? Your career will evolve. When I was your age, I had no idea what direction that my career path would take, but I can tell you this, that like Nephi, not knowing beforehand the things that I should do, nevertheless I went forth. And acting, instead of being acted upon, opportunities come. And the harder you work, the luckier you get. And God will reveal to you your path. So, how to get the most after this class? See one, do one, teach one. That's the learning. That's how you learn how to do this stuff. Network and networking events. Come. Honing skills in sales and leadership and marketing, accounting and finance and operations and coding. Everybody mentions coding. All these entrepreneurs. What do I wish I would have done more? Learned how to code better. Continuous reading out of the best books. Experience and internships. Most of all, your work ethic. Your daily planning and execution of your plan and your BHAGs. Your big, freaking, hairy, audacious goals. And finally, remember this. We're not here to teach you how just to get rich. That's not why we're here. I promise that this is more important than anything else and all the principles that you learn on Sunday. God bless you guys and good luck, and I hope that you enjoy this semester, and we'll do whatever we can to help you succeed as long as it's moral, ethical, legal, not too fattening.